The following recording is the Salem Chamber's public policy meeting from March 2nd. You're going to see a synopsis of the discussion of what has occurred thus far in the 2023 legislative session at the state capitol. In addition, you have a comprehensive conversation on the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project. And this was not without a number of questions and unique inquiries as to the sheer financial mass of a project of this magnitude. And lastly, you'll see a discussion on the proposed Polk County bond levy, which will appear on ballots for voters in Polk County in May of 2023. Thank you for paying attention to these key issues, and make sure to join us monthly as we tackle the difficult and complex issues facing us in the public policy space.
All right, we'll go ahead and jump right into our jam-packed program today. We'll start off with SACC lobbyist Nicole Palmateer Hazelbaker, owner of Bravio Communications. I'd like to refer to a little bio sheet here, which you can read while she comes up and presents.
Thank you. Well, it was my great pleasure to be representing the chamber. I appreciate the opportunity. Many of you probably better know my better half, Ryan Hazelbaker, Cascade Tire Pros. We've been here in the community for 50 years now, I think it is, a little bit of time. So certainly have a perspective on what business is happening and not happening sometimes here in Salem. You have a copy of bill tracking. This is a program that we use, my firm does, to track bills here in the session. I did take a liberty and talk to that business owner about things that small business cares about here in the Salem community. So please know we aren't catching everything, or we might be missing things, but at initial first glance, some things I just wanted to talk to you or highlight that are happening. House Bill 2433 is a proposal that would raise the threshold for the corporate activity tax from $1 million to $5 million. That one isn't on here because I caught it this morning. Tom actually testified on that bill earlier on in the session, and I think what's interesting about that is that this conversation keeps going. There are continuing to be more hearings. Part of that reason is that the state revenue forecast showed the state continues to be making money hand over fist. The most recent revenue forecast had another $700 million increase from close of session forecast. So the state is bringing money in like nobody's business. One of the clients is Piper Jaffray, now Piper Sandler. They're a finance company representing, they do a lot of corporate finance, corporate underwriting, as well as K-12 education. And they said Oregon confounds them. They do not know what's going on, why our state revenues continue to be so big. But what that is inspiring is a conversation about how we might need to revise some of the things that are really onerous for business owners right now, like the cat tax. So I think that's an important conversation. House Bill 2187 establishes the Willamette River Bridge Task Force, something that's been a long conversation. Representative Mannix is sponsoring that bill. It came in at the last minute. House Bill 2139 is also going to be looking at commercial air service within the city of Salem, and I know that that's been a conversation here within the chamber. These two have just barely come out. The Bridge Task Force did have a public hearing. We're not sure where that one's going, and the city of Salem Airport has not quite moved it to a hearing. House Bill 2254 is looking at industrial site readiness. And, as we kind of continue this conversation forward, I will be interested in what the chamber thinks about that. I notice a lot of industrial sites are being readied. I'm personally a big fan of Chick-fil-A. I'm happy to see them moving along here. But as that conversation continues, there are a couple of bills, 2258 in particular, that's trying to increase that industrial site preparedness and different programs that can help incentivize property owners to have industrial sites ready and bringing more business in, which I think is a positive move. As we truly ride along, House Bill 2662 looks at West Side commuter line to Salem as traffic continues to be an issue, and there's this broader conversation certainly among Democrats in the legislature around emissions, around fuel standards. The idea of rail has become really popular this session, and this idea of a commuter rail down to Salem is another one of those. Had a public hearing on the 21st and is continuing to have conversation about it. We expect that bill to go to Ways and Means, so it's going to continue the conversation throughout the end of the session. So something that the chamber may want to consider weighing in on. House Bill 2663 is another industrial site readiness program bill. Again, they have had a public hearing on it and it has good sponsors. So we expect that these conversations to continue moving forward. We had a couple of ones that are coming to us again from specifically around Salem. House Bill 3224 is the bill to study a streetcar system. This is from Representative Tom Anderson. He's very passionate about this. He's looking at a study to develop a rail system in downtown Salem. So they did this out in, I think they just passed one in Monmouth, I think it was a couple of years ago. Kind of an idea that, you know, his concept is that this would help to increase traffic in downtown Salem. Some on the other side would say it might make traffic worse in downtown Salem, but it is a conversation. He did get a public hearing. He is asking for a study. So should the chamber have some perspective on that? I think that that would also be something to weigh in on, as it certainly has some arguments on both sides of the fence. Flipping around here. Yesterday, we had a new bill that we don't love, House Bill 3507. The state loves to tinker around with independent contractors and likes to say whether you should or should not be an independent contractor and what they think that that should be. They came out yesterday. House Bill 3507 is another bill that looks at classifying status for independent contractors. I would imagine from the business community, that's not a popular one. Certainly not for a lot of my clients, not very fond of it. House Bill 3508 looks at publicly traded corporations having to identify a lot of information about their income, sales tax liabilities, and other information. We look at this from a business perspective because the more that a state puts that out there, the less competitive you are to attracting new business to come into the state. So we have that one on there to take a look at. Senate Bill 38 is a bill that I like. It says that if you have gone through the permitting process for a new project, then once the permit has moved forward, if something changes about the rules in the program under which you are permitting, then they will not, where the rules sat when you achieved your permit to move forward with the program should be the rules you operate under all the way through until the project is completed, versus now we passed a new bill. Now there's a new set of rules. Now you have to go back through and change everything in your project. This bill would stop that and say until the project is finished, you get to live under the rules under which you were approved, which is actually a very business-friendly proposal that I like. Senate Bill 44 looks at developing a business ombudsman within the Department of Administrative Services. The idea of this, again, is another bill to try to help the state become more business friendly. So I think that that is an excellent proposal. Senate Bill 45 is a task force on tax competitiveness. Again, trying to figure out how can we help the state be more business friendly, be competitive around the country. I think everybody here is very familiar, but and certainly knows at a personal level that the tax climate, and certainly my friend John Hawkins really knows it, the tax climate in Oregon can be considered very unfriendly to business. This is looking at really digging into that and saying, how can we as a state actually try to be more competitive with another jurisdiction? Finally, Senate Bill 1048 would ask the Department of Transportation to establish a small business assistance program to help businesses compete more on a level playing ground for public contracts. Right now, I know not personally, but from working with different clients that it's a tough process, but there's a lot of dollars starting to flow in here with the infrastructure packages that came from the federal government. They're going to need business to be able to work with the state to get those projects on the ground. This bill is a proposal to try to make that a better process and try to offer some sort of assistance. It does cap aggregated value of public improvement contracts that they can award in connection with the program, but anytime there's some sort of proposal that's trying to help business, I think that, you know, at least it's a step in the right direction. With that, the other question I get a lot is about what's happening in housing and homelessness. There are two big packages this session. House Bill 2001 is the broad, big package that is being put forward as the 60-day promise from the governor to look at what can we do to try to make some sort of difference. Program has a bunch of different pieces: residential use of commercially zoned lands, housing approvals, urbanization, production accountability, urbanization outside of Portland, agriculture, workforce housing, and needs analysis. So it's an enormous package. It's priced at about $130 million. There's a companion bill, House Bill 5019, which will be the funding package going through Ways and Means. I think that there's probably some benefits, probably some negatives of it, but they're pushing it so fast right now that there is that sense of, whoa, wait, what are we voting on? What's happening here? So they're trying to get it through quick. They're trying to get it up and scheduled and moving. It's a high priority for the governor. I think that there'll be a lot of questions, particularly around the zoning of commercial lands and how they may make revisions about that in order to try to inspire more ability to have housing, within local communities. So something that, you as a public policy group might want to dig into a little. That I've talked at the speed of light, but I'm happy to answer any questions before I have to sprint back to the Capitol this morning. Please.
That there's money.
Yes.
Is it one-time federal money? Is it ongoing money?
Tax money.
Tax money. That is.
Like I said, John could give you the real details of it, but it's tax revenue.
We're gonna have the largest kicker we've ever had in history.
We have so much money coming in that there are 2 reserve funds that the state has established. We will hit the top edge of those here within the next couple of years because we have so much revenue coming in the state. It's tax revenue.
Cat tax, or is it?
Personal income, cat tax, business tax, all of it put together in one. The cat tax has raised so much more money than they expected, which is why there's this conversation going on about raising the threshold. Business owner of Cascade Tire that I know would say, when they put the threshold at $1 million, what you really did, you didn't catch the big companies, you caught the family-owned businesses, the small businesses, where the intent, or how it was sold was, we're going to get large business and things like that, and that really isn't what happened. But they are bringing in money right and left from it too.
On the bills that you maybe identified on the industrial readiness program.
Sure.
Which one is tied to creating a situation where they can change the urban growth boundary? You know which one that is?
I don't, but I'll find out. Not off the top of my head.
You said urban growth. There, I read one little thing that in the state of emergency,
That's right.
they declared that they could they could put in and change urban growth boundaries.
Yes.
Basically on a whim instead of go through the normal process to create it.
Yeah. I do know that, and we're tracking it for the fire service. So I'll grab the bill number and I can send it to, or send it to Tom to send to you.
When I testified with the House Committee first on raising the cat tax threshold from 1 million to 5, the revenue forecast had not yet been released, and there was very quick the conversation that if we were going to look at that as a state, it would only be done under the impetus that at the top level they reassociate, so it would be revenue neutral. Now that, and then after when I testified at the Senate group, they had that information, and that was not the dialogue. Where do we think that's going? As you have a pulse on whether, in light of these new forecasts, and obviously May will be a very critical forecast, but do you have a sense of how attractable this really is to get it up to 5 million?
It's a good question. I think that, they're having another hearing on it today, so it is gaining traction. Otherwise, we'd never hear from it again. We'll be there today to listen and see what the conversation is and poke around a little bit with the committee. So I will be able to give you more of a sense of that after 1 o'clock today.
So our group understands the goal is we update on this, and our organization is second to invest in the great talent that Nicole, and it's designed very in-depth looks at these bills. But there's a flip side. Nicole can now send me a quick ping. Hey, we need people at X, Y, Z at this time. And so please be looking for those opportunities. It is incredibly easy to testify now. I have testified 3 times. All 3 times have been from my desk. even though I live in the city. It's very easy to do, and your business voice is very respected, and I have not yet been pounded down on. This is not a city council field, and really they are open to hear many voices. So if you do get those invites from myself and our organization, some activation would be very appreciated.
And to Tom's point, this session on the House side, they actually have a committee that's economic development and small business. So for the first time, it's Representative Janelle Bynum. She's owner of McDonald franchises up in Happy Valley area, who really does have that focus. She is a Democrat, but she very much cares about it. She actually leaves a moment on every one of her agendas for any small business to come and testify openly about any topic of concern at every committee of hers, which I really respect. So, there is this sense that, small business voice matters. And in that committee, which I've sat in for a number of different things, she's very strong to say, reach out to your small businesses, talk to your small businesses. You need to understand what the real issues are when we're considering, large packages on big issues like urban growth boundaries.
Her name again?
Janelle Bynum.
Bynum.
Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate that.
You.
Introduce you via
Yeah.
email to Janelle.
That'd be awesome.
All right, we got to move on to our next topic. We've got Polk County Commissioner Lyle Mordhorst and Polk County Sheriff Mark Garton. And I understand you brought a guest as well.
District Attorney Aaron.
District Attorney
Aaron Felton.
Aaron Felton. All right, turn it over to you guys.
I'm gonna let Mark Garton pick this up.
Yeah.
Well, the reason we're here is we're up for a reauthorization of our public safety levy in Polk County. Little history, in 2013, 2014, we were working 10 hours per day, noon to only patrol shifts we had. Our jail was still open 24/7, but our patrol shifts, there was 7 of us left out of our entire office. 2015, we went out for a public safety levy at up to 45 cents per thousand. We never charged that full amount. We ended up at 42.5 cents per thousand. And it's a 5-year operating levy, but we go out in the 4th year of the levies just to prevent, basically going up right to the last minute and trying to keep staff so they don't jump ship because of the uncertainty. It renewed in 2019, and it was a 70-30 split versus a 60-40 the first time. So there was an increase in that, which was awesome. And now we're in that 4th year again of our levy. We're not looking to increase staff, anything like that. There is going to be, would be an increase in the cost though, just based on what you all know. Just based on everything, up to 49.5 cents. So it's a 7-cent increase to keep the maintain and keep the staff that we have. What that does, I have 28 folks in my office that work, including me, that work patrol. The levy covers 14 of those positions, so half of my staff. And then it also covers 5 in the district attorney's office, which are 3 prosecutors and 2 legal support staff for those prosecutors. And then it also provides 5 staff members for my jail as well, 4 deputies, and then a civilian employee as well. And so we're really just trying to get the information out so that people understand what it is that we're asking for and why there's a small increase. 7 cents isn't that big on a, for instance, a 250,000 assessed value property. The total that you would pay is $126 a year. If you are savvy and you're paying attention to your taxes and your tax statements, you'd see about a $17 increase from 1 year to this new levy. Aaron, do you want to talk at all?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Aaron Felton.
Sorry.
Oh, better.
No,
that's
we
fine.
can pick it up because we have people watching online.
Yeah, I completely understand. My name is Aaron Felton. I'm the district attorney in Polk County. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I realize I've been elected district attorney 10 years now. I crossed that line this year, and it's been a privilege to be here. I think this may be the third time I've been to the chamber on this topic, and I don't think any of us here have to make a case for support for law enforcement, for the sheriff's office. Certainly, I think my office, y'all get it. You understand that good law enforcement, investment in that is an investment in small business. Good, effective, thriving small businesses is a public safety tool, is a crime prevention program. And that's why we come to you to ask for the renewal. I think you get it. But it's really stark what it does for my office. Essentially, right now, 3 prosecutors in my office is essentially 50% of the general funded positions in my office. And were we not able to have those positions, it's 3 prosecutors, criminal prosecutors, and 2 staff to support them. Were that not to be there, that is the heart of the prosecution staff in my office. Those are misdemeanor prosecutors, those are felony prosecutors. They do everything in my office. We don't assign people particular prosecution loads. They do based on their experience. They do the DUI prosecutions, they do domestic violence prosecution, they do the mental health prosecution, they do sex offense prosecutions, everything. And one thing we've been able to do, and I think this is especially important in the West Salem Business District, we prosecute shoplifting, we prosecute vandalism, everything through. We have been fortunate with the collaboration of our partners in the business community and in the community at large, is that we don't have a do not prosecute list. We don't have a list of offenses that because of our resources, we just can't prosecute. Everything that comes through the door, from the sheriff's office, from the Salem Police Department, from our other agencies, we consider for prosecution. And without the bodies basically to do that, you know, I don't like to say, well, we wouldn't do this or that, but obviously we'd have to make some tough decisions. But fortunately, we're at a place right now where we don't have to make those decisions. We have the resources to consider all cases coming through the door, and that is because of the support of the public safety levy, and that is because of the generous ability of Polk County citizens who have said, and above everything else, we're going to dip down in our pockets one more time to support our public safety partners, the sheriff's office, my office, to give good public safety resource to our office. We, like the sheriff, are at a status quo point. We're not asking for additional positions. We just are asking us where we are so we can continue to do the job that we're doing for our community. So I thank you for the opportunity to be here, and also I'll answer any questions when the time comes. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
So everybody, thanks for having us today. I just want to bring this to more of a local level. 2019 COVID hit. First thing we do, we start locking everything up. We're not making arrests. Our jails are closed. And you seen what happened downtown. I'm going to bring it into West Salem because that's where my heart is, and that's where I've spent a lot of my time. So West Salem Ace Hardware. Everybody knows Jeremy and Heidi now. They are the kind of the stars of the retail, what they do for our communities and stuff. So in 2019, their shoplifting amount of loss was $30,000. In 2020, Heidi calls me and says, you got to help. They lost over $130,000 in that 1 year. So they have the propane tanks out front, the Rhino program. They've had so many stolen, they're about ready to lose their contract. So they were just going to pull it. And that's a huge thing for West Salem. That's one of the great things. You can just go and exchange it. But that's just one of the small things. I got old Sheriff Garton, DA Felton. We got Judge Hill. We got Skip Miller and the chief from the city of Salem. We got a couple of the other police chiefs around, and we said, hey, what do? We are not going to survive this just not looking and not doing anything. We need a program. Sheriff Garton came up with an idea of we can make our jail work. So I figured out spacing in ways that we couldn't arrest everybody for a long term, but everybody knows Judge Lukanen. Charlie, I loved how he always said, I don't teach law in my court, I teach geography. When you cross that river, you're going to jail. What happens on Marion County side is out of my control. But I guarantee you, you're going to understand the boundaries of Polk County. So when this happened, we were making sure that when The city of Salem police officer arrested a shoplifting because even Ross had to hire their own private guys to stand at the door to keep the wine from walking out. Or a guy would walk back, grab a ham, and just walk out the door with it. They were losing so much. They saved like $100,000 paying for those private security guys at the door. And they were just getting the product back because if they called the city of Salem at the time, they wouldn't do anything. They would cite and release them, tell them not to come back. And that was it. Well, all of a sudden, they get hauled to jail. So they get put in the car, they hit Edgewater Wallace Road, and then the officer turns right. And the guy in the backseat goes, "Where are you going?" "We're going to Dallas." "I don't want to go to Dallas." "Are we going downtown?" "No, you're in Polk County." So for a person that's on drugs, when they get put into a jail cell and they can't get their drugs, withdrawals are brutal. So we made sure, these guys made sure that they remembered, I'm not going to do anything over there in West Salem or Independence or Monmouth because I can't go through that again. So, and just to carry this on, when you do make arrest with somebody's got a drug addiction, alcoholism, or mental health challenge, is jail the right place for them? All you're going to do is you're just going to exasperate their issues. They're going to go in there and it's going to get worse. So Polk County, years ago, Aaron Felton, Judge Hill, and even prior to that, they started with called a drug court. So when we arrested somebody that has drug addictions and they're stealing something, the Measure 110, everybody knows what it's done to us. It's put a major challenge on this, but we're figuring ways to work around it because we can't force them to seek help when we just arrest them on drugs. They can say yes or pay $100 fine. They walk out the door. They never pay the $100 fine. Okay, well, it'll be on their record. Next time we arrest them, you either paid you $100 fine. So you're going to seek help today or you're going to pay a $100 fine. I'll pay the $100 fine. Okay, well, they never pay. We get a parking ticket, we're going to lose their license, but they get a drug ticket. Okay, they're not going to pay. This drug court, what it does, the judge can look at them and say, we can give you help. Instead of going to jail, you can go to drug court. There's a lot of requirements. You'll check in weekly, your behavioral health, addiction, everything will all be addressed, but you have to follow the guidelines. So this drug court that they've got has now been working very well. Measure 110's dropped it down, but now we're getting those numbers building back up and doing everything we can. But we can address those issues at a local level with that investment and then solve the problem instead of just postponing it and extending it. So that's one of the neat things we're doing. This levy allows these guys to be proactive. One of the biggest things that we did when we legalized the grow of marijuana is we have illegal grows all over, because you can grow the marijuana here and drive across state and county lines and nobody knows. But if you're going to go out in Mexico and smuggle into the US, it's a major challenge. So why are we going to do that? Let's just grow it in Oregon. So Sheriff Garton, how many of those did you find in the last 2 or 3 years?
Well, in 2022, we came about 60,000 plants, seized a little over 500,000 in cash from these dealers. And, you know, there is this cartel nexus to all of them. We see the hallmarks of it in every one. They sometimes are working together in tandem. But just last year, yeah, 60,000 plants. Before that, we were just because that 60,000 is between Polk and Yamhill County. We partnered and got a grant for that position. But before that, we had 30,000 plants just in Polk County in 2021. So typically they're outdoors. That's the way they were at the beginning. They would have 20,000 plants at one time. We hit those pretty hard the first year. Now everything's indoor. They grow indoor 1,000 or 2,000 plants at a time, but they can grow year round. And so that's what we're seeing now. They're adapting to how we're adapting. And so we have to keep being proactive at that, because it is a quality of life and environmental issues and human trafficking, unfortunately, and just those types of serious crimes that come along with it. It's not just marijuana anymore. It's money laundering. It's all those bigger crimes.
heavy drugs. And there's a mile and a half out of town, there's this beautiful 27 square foot home, nice shop. And looking outside, it looks like a normal home. Yard's a little rough, but it wasn't bad. But in the roof of the house in the crown, there's a huge hole cut in it and a vent put in. Kind of really out of place. It's kind of rough patched in. And that's kind of the first telltale sign. When they called me and said, Commissioner, would you guys like to come out and see what we're fighting today? You step in the front door and it is solid plants. The living room has got this beautiful stone fireplace and it is wall-to-wall plants. Huge air ducts going everywhere to get the fans out in the air. And that's what that hole's kind of for, just to do that. Grow lights are everywhere, every bedroom, every bathroom. The only thing that is done to have plants or fertilizer or something was the kitchen. You have the refrigerator, the sink, and a little walk. And there's an Oriental gentleman living there. And then in the back corner there is like an army cot mat laying on the ground and a little Buddha. Other than that, those spaces, it is solid plants wall to wall. And the house out in the shop. And he was hired out of San Francisco. We will pay your room, board, very good money. All you have to do is you have to just take care and grow plants. And that's what he was told. And somebody brings him food every week or every other month. And working with Yamhill and the local things. And that's what our current staffing allows us to do. We can be proactive. I mean, my goal was, I remember Wallace Road or Wallace Marine Park, take my kids down there. We'd play soccer, we'd climb on the gymnasium, watch softball games. My wife would go down there with just the kids. Today, is it possible? I would love to get that back. Are those days gone? I don't know, but all I know is we need public safety to make that happen for any kind of hope. And working together with open minds and creativity minds and finding ways to do more with what we have. So the more ingenious ideas these guys can come up with and a lot of people and input, public input, what you see helps these guys do their jobs and believable. So marijuana grows, they have to be out of sight. When you see somebody hanging a black visqueen and closing up, make a phone call. Don't know what's going on, but are you aware of it? Do they have a license to grow? I mean, those tips, that's how we caught a lot of them first. And that just continues to grow.
You know, I would say we are seeing a generational sea change, a lot of conditions in terms of the environment. And I just say since I've been in this, not this job, but in the prosecution field since the last century. I started September 23rd, 1999 as a prosecutor in Polk County. And since that time, I've done a couple other things. I had to walk about it, but I came back and I said 10 years in this job as they elected. I've seen legalization of marijuana, measure 110 in terms of the non-criminalization of methamphetamine, heroin, and other hard drugs. The sea change in the mental health treatment and issue in terms of bringing this back down to the counties for addressing the crisis at Oregon State Hospital. And so the list kind of goes on in terms of the changing conditions in terms of local communities, law enforcement, and our and mental health treatment providers. Also, I would have to say the Black Lives Matter and those issues, bringing those to a head as well in terms of those issues as well. It has fundamentally created conversational challenges that I've not seen in years. So that creates a lot of conversation and challenges. I say that in a way that I say is important to point out, and creates a lot of challenges for the jobs that we do, and also challenges, I think, the business community, our communities in general. And so we are coming up with trying to come up with different ideas, different concepts, and I'm not saying I have all the ideas or can present them today, or this group has all the ideas, but it is a fundamental radical difference than it has been even within, I think, when all of us started our careers. I mean, Sheriff Garton and I really started this together at the same time. We were rookies together, so to speak, starting, and things are fundamentally different in terms of the law enforcement environment. And I welcome that challenge. I really do. I love doing this job every single day. But I appreciate the support of the community in doing it. And this levy is fundamental to be able to have the options to create a safer and more livable.
Well, we thank you very much for your service. We do have a couple minutes for some questions.
One question, so, fully support you guys, we need people like you. However, as you guys have this challenge that's come out since marijuana, measure 110, your neighbor counties may not be approaching it the same way you do. What have the challenges been with what leaks over, let's say, from Marion County? Is there any collaboration with you guys really work together on some of these?
At least for my office, we have weekly or every other week meetings with all the police chiefs, including either Chief Womack or Skip Miller, and really trying to get their folks to understand how Polk County works, because it is different and it is night and day different. But having them be able to push that information, so like for instance, Salem Police Department can act differently in Polk County and versus Marion County, because we don't want them to just cite and release everybody. It's not effective on our side of the river. And so we have those conversations all the time about ways to streamline things and be more efficient, especially when it comes to the jail and bringing those folks into the jail.
And I would say I have a regular collaboration with Paige Clarkson, area of Michigan County. We've known each other a long time, and we recognize there's a lot of interplay between the folks that they crisscross between the river. They live there, they work there, they share probation officers back and forth. And I do the same thing with Doug Martini from Lynn County, John Haraldson, Benton County DA. I'm on the board of directors for the Oregon District Attorneys Association, so we regularly have conversations. But I also have conversations with my colleagues from Umatilla County, other similar counties to ours, rural, urban types of counties as well, because we share the same kinds of challenges. But I also have the same kind of conversations with Chief Womack and his lieutenants as well, because I really don't want a Salem police officer to come over into Polk County from downtown Salem for whatever reason, say, oh, now I got to pick up a whole new playbook when I come over to Polk County and start doing things completely differently. We want to work on having streamlined, efficient. I don't want my medical examiners either, because we share the same folks as well, come over and have to pick up a whole new, procedure manual when they cross the river. Basically, we work real hard to have that interplay conversation so that we have a aligned type of set of procedures and philosophies too. Even though we sometimes we do it in some ways, we're resource rich than Marion County because we have the benefit of a larger jail with larger capacity, but we lack some other things in terms of the mental health resources that Marion County has. So we try to learn and riff off each other basically on that.
Basically, what we did is we simplified the playbook for the police officers in the city of Salem. If you arrest them, bring them in. So I'm one of those guys. I walk by a police officer. I thank him for being a police officer. It's really cool when you meet him walking down the hallway in the courthouse. Hey, Commissioner, thank you for being Polk County, because it allows these guys to do their jobs. You work so hard to find them. When you get them, then you have to cite and release them, let them go. They steal one car in Polk County, they're going to jail for a long time. I think the number is 9 in Marion County now, but not slamming Marion County. Their jail is so full of major type 11s that they've got to figure out a way to get past that and get their courts moving quicker.
But I got to tell you, I don't have as many homicides. Like
exactly.
That. So
those major 11s.
I'm careful what I complain about too, or brag about, because
Well, thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Commissioner, District Attorney.
Thank you.
Clear. Have a conversation on this. Since we don't have a fact sheet, can you review the numbers one more time?
So I gave Dan here, it breaks down the cost, but the cost is 49.5 cents per thousand. Increase on a $250,000 assessed value property. The increase is $17.
So this is not a flat replacement. There is an adjustment.
It's 7 cents higher than
7 cents. That's what I was looking at.
$17.50 annual increase on a $250,000 assessed home.
So, and then is there a website that
Yep.
we can find?
It's called it's keeppolksafe.com.
Thank you.
And no agency is asking for additional status quo.
Yep.
Great, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, it's my privilege to introduce our next speaker on the intro to the Interstate Bridge Replacement Project. Raymond Mabey, who's the Deputy Administrator for the Interstate Bridge Replacement Program and a good friend of mine. Right? Well, good. Go that way.
Dude, you want to pull up his?
Yeah, let's pull that up. I appreciate being here this morning. Thanks for the invitation, Chris. Always happy to talk about the program and where we're at, where we're going, and actually it gives me an opportunity to talk to people and see maybe how this bridge is important to you. As the past state bridge engineer for ODOT, one thing I learned is every bridge is important to somebody. They're moving something, it attaches between their home and their school or their hospital or their farm. No different for the Interstate Bridge. But I'd like to start by asking a question, see how awake people are. There's two things people hate. One of those is change. What's the other one? Okay, more?
Taxes?
Everybody hates taxes. Anything else? The way things are. Doesn't leave much room, does it? And then when you're doing a large infrastructure project, you're kind of caught in that space too, of trying to figure out the right amount of change and improvement that makes a difference, but keeps people's support. And the Interstate Bridge is no different. A little bit about me. I am currently the Deputy Administrator for the program. It's a bi-state program between Oregon and Washington. It's my 31st year with the agency, with ODOT. Started in '92 on April 1st. I don't know if one of that's significant at all, but in bridge design, worked my way through different roles. Was part of the OTA 3 State Bridge Delivery Program, if anybody remembers that, a large package statewide bridge improvements. And then found myself up on the Columbia River Crossing when that previous program was well underway. I ended up shutting the doors on that program when it wasn't funded. Went on to do things and was a Deputy Maintenance Manager for ODOT. Got to learn about the really brave and important men and women that serve our agency on the front lines. They are the front lines of ODOT out there. And then moved on to the State Bridge Engineer role before coming to the program again on the Interstate Bridge. So a lot of experience mainly around bridges and large programs. And that's what I bring here today. I'm going to give you an overview of the program, and I'd offer and ask everybody to interrupt if you got a question, and we'll just keep things rolling. Let me orient you first. Next slide, please. Program area. So this is a great graphic showing the program area. It is 5 miles of interstate and 7 interchanges. And so it's more than just the bridge, because the problems through this corridor involve not only the bridge, but also the surrounding interchanges. Today, we would do interchange design and have them spaced at least 2 miles apart. Because these are so close, and in some cases less than half a mile, this is really an interchange complex. They interact and overlap each other. If you're used to getting on and off the freeway on a modern interchange, you have very nice gradual on ramps and off ramps. Well, if you're to lay those out in the way we designed today, you'd be right on top of each other. And so that's part of the problem we're trying to solve with the congestion and other issues to this program. But it starts at on the south and north interstate. There's some ramp work there up through Marine Drive, very important interchange for the Port of Portland, onto Hayden Island, and then the Main River Crossing, the I-5 bridge, down to downtown Vancouver, where SR 14 ties in, and then Mill Plain Boulevard. Mill Plain is also an important interchange for the Port of Vancouver. Then up to Fourth Plain and some improvements on SR 500. But so this gives you an orientation of our main program area, where the work would be occurring the general scope. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the Columbia River crossing that didn't move forward. And so what happened after it didn't move forward was nothing, right? That no improvements were made. The problems didn't get fixed and the issues got worse. Traffic continued to get worse. On the previous program, we had congested conditions at peak travel times between 3 and 4 hours a day. Today, we're seeing that up to 7 to 10 hours a day. It has just gotten immensely worse. And recognizing that, the governors in 2019 of Oregon and Washington got together and said, we need to really do something about this. Let's restart this effort, this bi-state effort. And they signed a memorandum which really created the concept of bringing the program back together. We call it a program because this is a large program, and it's like I said, 5 miles of Interstate 7 interchanges, and I'll talk about the program estimate. But it will be broken up into likely at least 2 dozen packages of design and construction, and have a construction period of 8 to 10 years. So it isn't just a project; it is a program of projects. One thing that's different today that wasn't in place last time, that people ask, well, what's different? Why do I have hope for this to happen again? One is because we have a bi-state legislative oversight committee that's got legislators from Oregon and Washington, 8 from each state, that meet regularly, provide oversight and guidance to the program. And that has been key in not only just keeping the legislature informed, and responding to questions, inquiries, and guidance, but also that connection between the states so that we're actually working together on this rather than getting in different positions. So I think that is one of the key differences that will help the 2 states stick together in a way that didn't happen last time. We have the same partners as we did last time. We're in the same geographic area. The project hasn't moved. So we've got I don't like to call this the kind of the Noah's Ark project. We've got 2 of everything. We got 2 DOTs. We've got the 2 cities of Portland and Vancouver, the 2 metropolitan planning organizations of Metro and RTC in Vancouver. We've got the 2 transit agencies, the TriMet and C-Trans. C-Trans, the Vancouver Clark County transit agency. And then we've got the 2 ports, the Port of Portland and Port of Vancouver. And these are important partners in the program supporting our work. We've got IGAs with each intergovernmental agreements with each of these to help provide review and input to the program. But particularly, we've got each of the principals on these organizations sit on our executive steering group. So they provide direct guidance and direction and oversight to the program as well. So there's a good alignment there. Like I said, we've got the 2 states. And because there is a high capacity transit mode here, we actually have 2 lead federal agencies. We've got Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration. So the 2x2 keeps going on. Next slide, please. Great. So just a little timeline for where we've been. In 2004 to 2014, we had the Columbia River Crossing project. And why is that important? Is because we achieved a pretty significant milestone. We had a record of decision from FTA and Federal Highway Administration on our project, what we call the locally preferred alternative. And that means we had federal approval. And the feds believe that that approval still exists and is valid. And so the challenge for the new effort of the Interstate Bridge Program is to look at that previously approved program, understand what changed in the intervening years, and adapt it to today's realities. What's changed? We've seen West Hayden Island was going to be planned by the Port of Portland. They were going to build out a terminal facility. They've abandoned those plans, so that traffic generator isn't there anymore. C-Tran, the transit agency in Clark County, Vancouver area, didn't wait around. We were planning to have a downtown couplet for light rail into downtown Vancouver. Well, they've gone ahead and built a bus rapid transit system in Vancouver, Clark County. And they've been recognized nationally for their efforts. So they've continued to build out and their high capacity transit system in a way that allows us not to have to do that today. So it changes the scope a bit. We've had buildings go up that weren't there before. we had regulations come up that weren't there before. So the challenge that what we did over the last couple of years was to kind of bring a project back from the ashes. There's no playbook for that. And so it's really trying to pull the partners, the two states together, the two federal agencies, and figure out what the right path is. So we looked at those changes that we observed. We developed evaluation criteria with our partners, and we screened these options that helped us react to those changes. So how do we modify the design to accommodate for those changes, screen those, and then include them in what we call modified locally preferred alternative, or the modified investments we'll make, recognizing those changes. So that's really been the work over the last couple of years. And last year, what we did is we received endorsement from those partner agencies around that modified program. And that allows us to take it into I'm going to geek out here, a new NEPA process, a National Environmental Policy Act, into a supplemental draft or supplemental environmental impact statement, because we had one, we had a record decision. Now we're supplementing it with our new work. And so part of the way we did that last year was reconfirmed our purpose and need. Why are we doing this project? That's a NEPA term. We also identified climate equity as community priorities that we wanted to incorporate. Our partners actually asked us to change the purpose and need and put those in. We asked our federal partners, and they said, "You betcha you can, but you got to start over." And so what we heard from our partners, as well as the legislature and the governors, was there's 10 years spent on that previous project. There was $200 million invested. Don't throw that away. Don't waste that good work. Build on it and deliver with speed. So we decided to not take that path to restart, and found other ways to embed climate and equity values in the program. And then, like I said, we got that modified preferred alternative approved by our partners. And now what we're doing is stepping into that NEPA process to evaluate the impacts and benefits of the program, and then have a supplemental record of decision. And I'll talk about the schedule next. Next slide, please. Any questions so far? Good, everybody's eyes are awake. Good. So here's just a rough program schedule. You'll see the program launch at the beginning of 2020. And then a lot of planning and like I said, kind of refiring the project, starting some design efforts to understand how the project changed over time. Needs to change because of those changes that happen in the intervening years. Getting that local support. There's ongoing community engagement to not only in the local area, but statewide, because this is a project of statewide significance for both states. It's one of the biggest bottlenecks in the country. I think it's number 31, 32, and it's one of the highest accident rates, interchanges in both states. And a lot of our goods and products move through this area because of the port. So it does impact goods that need to be shipped from Eastern Oregon through the I-5 corridor. And it is, a connection between Canada and Mexico, our I-5 corridor, continuous route. Only, let's say, the second one that has a stop sign on it because of the lift span. It actually stops traffic. Anyway, so we're starting that environmental process. I talked about kind of some timelines. We expect to have that environmental process done late in 2024. That allows us to move into permitting and pre-construction activities. But meanwhile, we are actively seeking funding. I think we heard some of the discussion around the IIJA, the federal transportation legislation that came through. And we are we're definitely seeking those opportunities. A program of this size and complexity needs funding from a lot of different sources. I'll be getting into that. But as my peer on the Washington side, like say, we need to go through every couch cushion looking for change, whether it's local, whether state or federal. And we're going to try to go through the federal couch cushion pretty thoroughly. There are some once in a career or lifetime programs out right now that weren't in place before, and probably won't be in place for a while, the mega grant and the bridge improvement planning grant that I'll talk about later. These have significant opportunities for us. And then once we get our permitting and planning done, we look to begin construction late 25, early 26. And at that point, you'll see also at the lowest level there is the earliest tolling start, because tolling is also part of that funding picture. It also provides some congestion management attributes that I'll talk about. Backing up just a little bit, one of the things that you'll see us be daylighting here soon near the end of the month is our financial plan built off our recent estimate. And I'll talk about how we expect to fund the program over its lifetime. Next slide. So why are we doing this? What are the things we're trying to solve? The previous program and actually all the studies left up to that. So you think about CRC starting in 2004. Well, there's 20 years of regional studies that led up to that, and they identified and validated these 6 problems. One is safety through the corridor. I talked about those overlapping interchanges, so those movements. You don't have really any transition time to get on, so you're merging with through traffic, and so you're also merging through traffic that has very narrow lanes. Typically, we're 11 to 12 feet. These are maybe 10, so a lot of freight traffic through here too. We've got there's no shoulder. There's no opportunity for vehicles that are disabled or an accident to get off the through lanes. So that complicates safety issue. We got poor sight distance. As you approach the bridge going north, there's a hump in the bridge that kind of comes back down. That was actually added when the second bridge was built, because the number of bridge lifts was so problematic and interrupting traffic that they actually built that hump to reduce the number of bridge lifts, allow more river traffic to go underneath. But that causes sight distance. It doesn't meet standards, and there's accidents because you can't see. There's congestion. I mentioned the congested conditions. There's over 143,000 vehicles crossing this bridge every day. With I don't have the number on the top of my head about the number of the value of the commerce going across, but it's significant. But there's that freight movement through the corridor is stuck in those same congested conditions. And so people that need to get their goods delivered, especially for just-in-time delivery, are impaired by those congested conditions. Same thing for the public transportation. There is a express bus that C-Tran runs that goes from Vancouver to Portland, and it's stuck in those same congested conditions. So it's really difficult for people that rely on that to get to their job on time to rely on it. And then if any bikers here, anybody like to bike? 1, 2, 3. Anybody been across the bridge? What do you think of it? Yeah. It's dicey. It's not comfortable. You're on this very narrow sidewalk that the truss members actually come down and penetrate the sidewalk. And so when you meet oncoming traffic on the sidewalk, one of you has to dip into the plane of the truss elements, right? And guess what's just on the other side of that? Trucks going fast and cars. There's no shoulder and there's a very small rail. So it is not comfortable and it doesn't meet the needs, and it doesn't connect with other path networks, the 40-mile loop or other networks. So there's that. And then because I'm a bridge engineer, I believe the best for last is earthquake vulnerability. These bridges were built in 1917 and 1958. You think about 1917, we hadn't even entered World War I yet, just to give you a sense of timing of when this thing was built. Neither was built to any seismic standard. We didn't have that in our playbook. Actually, those weren't really developed to the 70s. So they are susceptible to damage and collapse in an earthquake, especially a subduction zone earthquake that we have from the Cascadia subduction zone. We have timber piles that go down about 70 feet, but the liquefiable soils actually go down about 200 feet plus to what we call the trout deformation, which isn't quite rock, it's compacted soils. But so you have this bridge floating in liquefiable soil. Mayor Mary Ann from Vancouver likes to say it's toothpicks and chocolate pudding. Not a bad comparison, but yeah, so these bridges are a vital connection between our states that we will need for any type of recovery in a large earthquake is critical, and it's important for our commerce. If you can imagine just relying on the I-205 bridge, if that is down, and what would that mean to the area? We did it for a week when we replaced the trunnion. A lot of good early communication allowed us to have really reasonable traffic conditions, but for a prolonged period, it would be untenable. So next slide, please. So as I mentioned, equity and climate are key priorities. How are we doing that? How are we embedding that? One is most projects have a community advisory group, and we have one of those as well. We also have an equity advisory group that helps us understand and define equity, how to bring that in. Equity is not addressing equity isn't necessarily an outcome, it's also the process. How do you include people that typically aren't included? And that group helps guide us. We're also looking at how to meet the climate goals of the regional partners and the states through our work. And to do that, we've brought on 2 individuals that help lead us, a principal climate officer and a principal equity officer, to help lead that area, but embed those in our program in a way that helps with our resilience and our uplift. Next slide, please. Here. Great. So like I mentioned, this last year, we got endorsement of the program from our partners. Funding wise, there's been a big change. Until the session last year in Washington, we had monies contributed by both states to bring the program back online. We have $100 million right now from both states. But last year, Washington legislature, through its Move Ahead Washington program, bill allocated $1 billion to the program. That is a significant move from Washington, because if you remember last time, we didn't move forward because the Washington legislature failed to allocate their funds when the Oregon legislature did. And just to give you an idea of the relative scale, back then it was $450 million. Talking about that as we talk about the estimate, but it's a significant step forward for Washington to show that commitment, and then have Oregon realize that they're serious about this, which is important, and then move forward. As I mentioned, federal funding, we've gone after some of those grant funds. We went after a planning grant, and it's not insignificant. It's $1 million for a program that is in the billions. It may seem small, but it's an important commitment. They only had 20 million. They gave us one of them. And this is for us to look at the soil conditions on Hayden Island, because that is also on liquefiable soils, and how we can improve that in the program. Let's go to the next slide. So why now? Actually, I think this bridge could be improved, or the slide could be improved, because why now is because it's not getting worse and it's not going to get cheaper. And we know that Cascadia subduction earthquake is in our future. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But the bridge is functionally obsolete. You've got those narrow lanes and those shoulders. You've got roof truss elements above it that limit the loads that are high, wide, and heavy. And we know that that congestion bridge lifts, we got many bridge lifts, over 350 a year, that impact traffic and cause backups and accidents. Like I mentioned, delayed funding is really delayed construction, and time really is money in this program, and I'll talk about that in a bit. And those once in a generational funding opportunities are here now. And that can reduce the burden on our 2 states and the users in a significant way. So we need to take advantage of those. So what's the project look like? Let's go to the next slide. On the top, you'll see a view looking to the north. So on your On the top, you'll see in the near of the interchange at Marine Drive that continues over Hayden Island, over the main river, and then into Washington, Vancouver. Some things to note here is we're a full replacement of Marine Drive. Anybody's been around Marine Drive interchange and peak travel times, it's a mess. One of the things that we talked about is changing is we got those 5 interchanges, 7 interchanges in 5 miles. Ideally, we'd like to remove one completely, but the built environment is just not really suitable for that. And if you remove one, all those movements got to go to the other. The traffic doesn't go away, so it can overload that for design. But what we do have proposed here is a partial interchange on Hayden Island, where you have access to I-5 to the north with a northbound ramp and then a southbound off ramp to Hayden Island. But to access North Portland and Marine Drive interchange, there's a local access bridge. You'll see that gray one on the right there. That's a local access bridge from the island that will let local traffic stay local. So people that want to access the island from North Portland or vice versa can do that, be on the local access bridge, hit Marine Drive and MLK, and not be on the interstate. That's important, removing traffic there. That's good. Also, the island residents have said, the only way we get home is by the interstate. When it's congested, we're stuck. So we'd like to have another way off. Also added to that bridge will be a shared use path for people that want to walk or bike or need to roll. And that would connect on and go over the main river crossing. On the other side, you'll see orange or yellow line, I'm color challenged, is light rail. So as we looked at how to improve transit and screening, we looked at bus rapid transit and light rail. Light rail was the chosen high capacity transit mode. And we would extend light rail from from Expo Station on its own bridge over the North Portland Harbor with a station on Hayden Island, over and on the main river crossing bridge. And then the change here isn't to go to downtown, but have a station on the waterfront in Vancouver, and then follow the I-5, hug I-5 until you get to Evergreen or where the library is. And then from there, actually connect to the bus rapid transit system that's been established by CTRAN and connect those 2 modes. So that would be our extent of the high capacity transit mode. Let's see what else am I missing. Oh, auxiliary lanes. So we've got 3 through lanes to the north and 3 through lanes to the south of the program area. And we've got this 5-mile stretch. How can we make it operate better? How can we make those through lanes actually be through lanes? Well, one is modern interchange design. So you have those good transitions on and off. The other is an auxiliary lane that allows for traffic to go to either transit between interchanges without getting in those through lanes. So they get on, stay in that auxiliary lane, and then get off, or allow for those good on transitions for merging into through traffic or coming off. The previous program had 2 auxiliary lanes. Well, this was a compromise that we made with local partners to study. So we're studying, this is what we're studying. This isn't necessarily what we're building. This is what we're studying in the NEPA process to see how that works. We're also have moved in the study of a second auxiliary lane as well, because the previous program had it. And so we'll be looking at those results throughout this year and next to see how they're performing and what the right choice for the program is, what the benefits and opportunities are. Let's see what I'm missing here. On the lower slide here, that's what North or Vancouver would look like. Because we are putting a fixed span in, this is not a movable span. It is a fixed bridge. We need to accommodate river traffic, the reasonable needs of navigation, as well as avoid airspace from Pearson Airfield in Vancouver and Portland International Airport. So we are literally threading a needle between river traffic and air traffic, and then have a bridge that has a grade, a steepness that allows for trucks to move efficiently, as well as pedestrians, as well as a light rail. And so That means that as we come into Vancouver, we're actually above the railroad bridge. If you know, as you drive into Vancouver today, you go underneath it. So that's what gives you a difference of the grade, idea of the difference of the grade. Next slide, please. I know we're getting close here, right, Chris? Time?
Yeah, we're getting close.
Let's see. So I mentioned that this is what we're studying, and we're understanding those impacts and benefits. And I talked about the kind of the timing of that. So let's skip to the next one. Get into the estimate. So as we landed on that program to take into the NEPA work, that gave us an opportunity to actually understand what the potential cost might be. And so we're able to extract quantities based on that very high level design, maybe 5%. But we understand kind of what the project is. And a lot of projects, smaller projects can get by with estimating by starting with maybe very low level of design, but a higher level of contingency, like 40%. And as you know more and you get closer to construction, you drop that unknown contingency from 40 to 30 to 20 to 10. And then you have a small amount for construction, probably 3.5%. But big projects like this, you need a little more robust estimating. So what we've done is looked at our base cost, and then we created a significant risk register, over 200 risks that we added costs to and probability of occurrence. And then we were able to run those through a Monte Carlo analysis that gave us a range of costs for the program, depending on how those risks are mitigated or not. And I'll be talking about that in a minute. Oh, so yeah, the numbers here. So cost estimate range from the low end is 5 billion. On the high end is 7.5. So at the 5 billion mark, that means everything went perfectly. We had no delays in schedule. There were no claims. There were no changes in scope, and every risk we're able to mitigate. The 7.5 billion end is things blew up. We weren't able to mitigate things. Schedule shifts happened that we predicted, and we're exposed to additional costs. But our most likely range, our most likely cost estimate for the program is 6 billion. Now, that's a big number. And I really want to just be clear. This is the cost of delaying a mega project. Back on CRC, the cost estimate was 3.4 billion. Escalation and inflation over the intervening years is about 60%. That gets you to about 5.6 billion as of last year. We're not building this bridge until 2025. That's the cost of the delay. And I'll be talking about that. Let's see, next slide, please. So what's changed? We've all seen the inflation rates go up. We've seen workforce shortages and have pressures on costs there. We've got competing projects. We've seen material costs blow up. Anybody done any home improvement projects and dealing with plywood or wood through COVID was at the shocks. We've had global supply chain issues as well. Next slide shows some typical construction material cost trends. And you can see just in 2020 to 2022, significant increases over time. We know we need steel, 91% increase. We know we need lumber and plywood, 45% increase. Transportation with trucks, 36, 37. That just goes and gets built into other costs. So these cost trends we've seen in these last couple of years has been unprecedented and impactful and added to pressures that we need to be really mindful of, which means schedule is key, maintaining schedule. Next slide, please. So I mentioned funding sources to get us to this program cost. And so we want to make sure we had an idea of how we'd actually cover this most likely cost range. So let's start with the state funding. We've got existing state funding, like I mentioned, of 100 million. Washington in the previous Connected Washington bill had 98 million for Mill Plain. We've got the Move Ahead Washington billion. We've got hopefully the Oregon legislature considering its match to that of another billion. And that leaves other sources. The main sources are either the state, the feds, and tolling would round out the last. That's why we're trying to go after as much federal money we can to really just round out the last with tolling and leave that at the end. In fact, the feds believe that their last dollar in, so they want to see those local monies come. But our toll funding estimate is between 1.2 and 1.6 billion. That is based off of we don't have any new a new level 2 traffic and revenue analysis yet. It's actually being done right now, and will feed into that finance plan I mentioned earlier. But from the previous effort with less traffic, that's higher range on a level 3 investment grade analysis got us to 1.6 billion. So we think that's a comfortable top range. We expect federal grants from Federal Highway Administration and US DOT to be between 860 million to 1.6 billion. That's significant. We recently saw the Brent Spence Bridge in Ohio get a bridge improvement planning grant, 1.25 billion. They are half our size and not as complex. And in fact, if you look at the criteria of the grant, we need it much more. So we think there's great opportunity there. And then FTA, they have a capital improvement grant program to help pay for transit. And so we expect to tap that grant program between 900 million to 1.1 billion. That gets us a range of 5.2 to 6.5 billion funding that we think covers that most likely range that we will continue to target as our goal to stick to, which means we need to have active cost controls in place and risk management in place. Next slide, please.
Minute or two.
Okay. We're doing an economic impact analysis to understand what the impact of these dollars means to the state and the region, because we would have the local dollars that would be here potentially anyway. However, the dollars that we bring in also have a significant impact. And so I'll leave that slide for folks to dig into later. And then go to our next steps and leave it for questions. So as I mentioned, we're going to get that financial plan done. We're looking to see actually two things from our legislatures in Oregon, Washington. One is hopefully Oregon considers their match to Washington's billion. And then Washington needs to give its commission toll authority to begin discussions between the two transportation commissions around toll rates and policies. We'll do that level 2 traffic and road revenue analysis. We'll continue to work on the draft EIS and then do the final and ROD in 2024 with construction in 25. So that leads me to questions, and that was pretty fast overview. Fast maybe because I could keep going on in more detail, but know that
You said it's an eight-year project.
yeah, so one thing we're doing right now is looking at the packaging of how we might actually break this up and maintain traffic, because we're
Is it engineered to take increased traffic 8 years from now, or just to fix the problem we have today?
and so
we're gonna spend however many billions on $6 billion on this, and 6 years be obsolete, we'll have too much people living in the state of Washington.
That's a great question. So what are we doing to manage the congestion, and what does the project include? I mentioned the improvements to the highway. We think that also the opportunity for effective light rail or effective high capacity transit allows people to get out of their car if they want to and get out and have a reliable trip there. And then tolling also will have a congestion management action where some discretionary trips will make different choices. So to get to your specific question, the typical planning horizon that we have for most of our models is 20 years. So that is our target horizon. So we're looking at the traffic models that take us that far and making sure that we have a project that meets our needs the least out that far.
So engineered for 20 years with population increase, so like that, 20 years.
That is the standard practice from our federal partners in the region across the country. Beyond that, our models get muddy because our predictability of what's going to happen is less.
Say it's tough for, I own a very small company and I have trucks to use that bridge every single day. And I'm paying over $200,000 a year in weight mile tax. Any vehicle over 60,000 pounds has to pay heavy vehicle use tax to the feds. And now you're going to toll me too. That's tough to swallow. And I'm tiny little. I want the bridge to be better. I want that bridge to be better. The fact that I-5 is essentially 2 lanes from border to border in the state is ridiculous. The state should be embarrassed. However, Are you gonna tax me to death to fix any of it? There's not a good road in this state, I'm not aware. I don't like having any of them.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me to fund a $6 million project, you start tolling me and my trucks to go across that. That's tough to swallow. And when I say you, please no, I don't mean.
Yeah, understand, appreciate that. Yeah, no,
Having the state, sure.
yeah, well, it is tough. Things aren't getting cheaper. And like I mentioned, this project has nearly doubled in time because of a delay. And it hasn't done anybody any favors. So things have gotten worse and we've got a higher cost. So the idea is that we would, look at those other funding sources and figure out how we can reduce the 12 we can. But things are just projects of the size and complexity across the country use every one of those funding sources to get built.
Maybe that's what we figure out a way to do away with the.
Yeah.
One more question and then,
Yeah.
Given the overall money, I think it's full actually. So, given also the 7-10 hours of current congestion, that's a recipe for reduced demand impact. Bottlenecks on both sides of this project as well. I'm worried about perceived failure of the voters. The same congestion, I think it'll be more likely to reduce demand rather than increase population demand. But given the importance of this corridor is an economic impact, that's this. I think it's great.
Yeah, that's been a concept that's been discussed. Because of those active movements in that 5 mile stretch and 7 interchanges, it's almost logistically impossible to have a freight lane. You need only a freight lane when you have a longer stretch of uninterrupted road. But it's something we continue to look at. The concept of induced demand is typically focused on areas that are adding capacity. We're not adding any through lanes. We're trying to make the through lanes operate more efficiently than we have. And so we don't think that that's what we're going to see, because it's 5 miles, but it's fairly short across the whole system, that you're constrained on either end. And we're actually allowing traffic to come off it. So we don't think that induced demand is a scenario that's applicable here, but it's one of those things that gets talked about often. I think there was one more question.
Yeah, just a yes or no question.
Yeah.
And all the planning that you're doing, Major League Baseball really actively trying to get it in. So you're looking at something in the next 6 years. Could explode traffic with 80, 90 game home games. Has that been thought through at all?
It depends on where it's at in the planning process and how it's included in the models. If it's still just an idea, then it's an idea. But it gets to a good point, and this gets to induced demand is our different land use laws and actions. So what generates traffic? So we've got big box stores on Hayden Island, that generates traffic. We've got different tax laws in each state, that generates traffic. And so if we're looking at how to modify or change traffic patterns, it's land use that actually is a big generator, that is a bigger and broader discussion beyond the program.
well, thank you, Ray, for
Yeah.
coming down. So it's a very complex,
Oh, yeah.
not a simple thing. If people have additional questions, well, how would you go about getting that?
Share my contact information and I can make sure it gets out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions for Ray, go ahead and you can email me or Jeff, Tom, and we'll get it to Ray for you and get some questions out, answers out to you. With that, we are transitioning now to the remaining portion of our
Chris, what we want to do is, this would be a very quick Q&A if you have any last questions that came up here. Ray's presentation specific that for Polk County. So if you've got some things that you want either Lyle or Mark to address, excellent, ask them now. If you do not, we need to excuse Lyle and Mark before we go into endorsement.
Has there been any polling? Do you have any polling on the levy?
Not at this time.
Okay,
So-
so the other question I had is, I don't know the right way to ask this, but the levies, we basically read up, how long has this levy been sort of renewed?
It's a 5-year levy.
Okay.
We come back to the voters on the 4th year. And if this levy's passed, the final year of the current levy would just go away and the new levy would start on the following
Okay,
year.
the question was, the current levy is probably a renewal of a levy previous.
2015.
Yeah, so we're going all the way back to 2015 and probably before that. So this is really kind of a levy that's been in place
Since 2015.
since 2015.
So 2015 passed with a 60-40 vote at a 45 cents. We came back in 2019 at 42.5 cents because that's all we'd levied. And it won 70-30. And that's the current levy we're in now. So
At 42.
42.5. So 42.5 now will be at 49.5 in the new levy.
Gotcha.
Any other questions?
I'll just leave you the final thought.
Yeah.
Having somebody come up, bust your plate glass windows out and then sit down because he wanted to have a shower and a meal. And then he gets cited and released. And then the police officer to tell you that that's what insurance is for. That's not accepted in Polk County. That's what law enforcement is for. So as business people and a businessman, I totally get what's happening downtown. We want to have families, wives, parents, grandparents walking downtown shopping in a positive way in a very robust neighborhood and downtown business district. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I believe we need to vote on the proposal. Do we have a motion?
Yeah, I think we probably just need to open it up. Is there any further discussion just for sake of conversation as to whether or not this group wants to support, not support? Remain neutral, and then that has to go to the board of directors.
Have we gone out to our Polk County members?
This is the first we've heard of this. We've not gone to.
I mean, I think that we would want to know where kind of the chamber members that are in the county. You know,
Actually, that would not fall in line with ask. We post this and open this up to all of our membership to attend and participate in. And we traditionally have about the same 35 to 40 members who follow public policy. Today, you had a total of 38.
So the question is the group that's here and online want to support, not support, remain neutral?
Yeah, can you clarify what that means? Is that just us? Then we support you, is that us on social media supporting, what exactly does that actually mean?
Yeah, I can provide process there, Jonathan. So the commissioners have formally asked me via our board for an official endorsement of this bond package. What would come with that would be a recommendation first from the public policy group to the board of directors in support or opposition or neutral. From there, the board would then take an official Salem Chamber position, and once that's taken by the board, we then have a public statement releasing our position and reasonings, and then that can be used by the campaign as an official endorsement on their website as well as in all of their programming. It would not be incumbent on our organization to lead this campaign or provide any of that backup. They are just simply asking for our endorsement. And in full disclosure, they're asking for all three chambers in Polk County. So that'd be Monmouth, Independence, and the Dallas Chamber and the Salem Chamber.
As a Polk County resident, I will just publicly say I support this from two aspects. One, I like that when you're geographically across the river, if there's something that happens, there's a consequence to it as opposed to no consequence. Secondly, I think that Polk County has proven to be a really good fiduciary of dollars and levies from the sense of first levy was 45.5 cents per thousand, and then when they went out for the next one, they reduced it based on their costs and expenses to 42.5. It's not a huge difference, but it is a. How often do we see levies go the opposite direction? So I feel like that's a good group that looks at the dollars. So to go the other direction a little bit, knowing how costs have risen, seems reasonable to me as a Polk County resident.
Yeah, I'm a Polk County resident also, and what I really appreciate about the Polk County is what they're able to do in concert with Marion County and Young. There's a lot of go-between and synergy within those three counties, and really appreciate that. And this is a small increase for something that's really.
All right.
I just want to say it's what I want on this side of the river. So I want to show that I support that, to show that I want that here. That's my decision.
All right, well, we're at that time where we need to make a decision, so can we get a motion?
I'm going to endorse the county.
All right, we have, it's been motioned and seconded to support the levy in Polk County. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, for process, Chris, if you're calling, we will need Patricia, Lauren Baumgartner, Stephen, and Jim to indicate with a thumbs up or thumbs down on their Zoom feed. If we see none, we will not take your vote, and that's fine as well. That's in addition to the people in this room.
All right, any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Lonnie, please leave your hands up.
Aye.
And then if you're online, make sure you put your thumb up if you would like to vote aye. And any opposed? Hearing no opposed. And if you are opposed online, please put a thumbs down. Okay, motion carries.
That'll appear in front of your board of directors 2 weeks from yesterday on March 5th.
And with that, I will excuse you. Thank you for joining us today.